let's talk for a minute. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot to talk about with my current guest.
Hi.
Ashildr and I, let's see, we met right before COVID lockdown because it was provincial games, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was at the provincial games.
Yep. And just typical SCA meeting, we bumped into each other. Explosively extroverted personality meets slightly less explosively extroverted personality. But we stayed in touch, and now, by a really odd set of coincidences, she's Sable Storm Herald, and I'm Cadillo Herald, if I'm saying that right. The Candle Herald, as they call it, for Wiesenfeuer. But one of the other things that Ashildr does that I really wanted to bring in and talk to you guys about was she's one of the cornerstones in the local Rapier community. If there's a Rapier practice or a Rapier tournament, I can guarantee I'm not going to be able to reach her because she's out fighting. And one of the things about this series that I've always wanted to do is I want to talk about SCA culture. Now, everyone in the SCA, if you've been in it for any length of time, understands that knights swear to the king, and it's the oldest tradition. I mean, we know that the top fighters swore to the king of Babylon in Mesopotamia. I mean, your lead war fighters. And for better or for worse, it's a good broad analogy that most of your aspiring heavy fighters who aren't knights are going that direction. So we all fight under the king's order. I don't think anyone ever really contemplates that the Rapier fighters do anything different. But the fact of the matter is they do. Now, it's not that you're ever going to see the Rapier community go up against the heavy community. Not only would every marshal in the SCA have a heart attack at that conversation, but they approach loyalty and service to the crown through a very different dynamic. And I've never fought Rapier, which is part of the reason why I asked Ashildr to come in, was I could fumble my way through this answer and I would not do it justice. As you know, we both, I mean, I could tell you she eats, sleeps, and breathes heraldry like I do. But when it comes to Rapier, I am the outside spectator. She is out there and doing it. So, and I think one of the things we want to start with, and actually pause, before I jump into this, we're going to use the word cult here. Understand that we're using it in the extremely secular personality group definition. Yes, cult has a religious connotation both historically and in the modern day. That is not how we're using it here. But you will hear the word cult used a lot. Please understand, this is a secular group definition. There is none of the old historical religious connotations on it, and there's none of the coercive modern connotations in it. So a little bit of linguistic anthropology out of the way. But the Cult of Regina, I've heard that brought up for years now, and I've not necessarily gotten the best of answers in the past, so I'm going to be listening to this real closely too. So I'm going to hand this over to you. Cult of Regina.
So, in the same way that like the heavy community like swears their fealty to the king, and kind of like everything they do is on kind of the path towards, in theory, like crown by right of arms. Like they have their way of their fealty to the crown. We have the more fun, I'm biased, but the more fun way of fealty to the crown. We, especially in Ansteorra, the Rapier community swears our fealty to the queen, or just the crown consort, whatever the case may be. Like, that's why our big, like, tournament is Queen's Champion, and at Queen's Champion, the entire Legion, we are collectively the Legion of Swashbucklers, because again, we are very, very fun. We are all theater kids at heart. The Legion of Swashbucklers swears our fealty to the Queen. We have like an entire song we do about it. It's her big day. We make it a big deal. And a lot of that kind of comes down to historical ideas of relationships to the Queen. Like Elizabeth I especially, she had Queen's Champions of her own, especially I think it's Henry Ditchley or Henry Leeds. I'm gonna check. Don't spot check me.
There were several Henrys in her court.
There's so many Henrys.
And several of them were accomplished sword fighters.
A lot of them were accomplished sword fighters, and she had a yearly tournament. to determine her champion. And actually, there's a very, very famous painting of one of her champions wearing a ring from every time he won, and it's all over his hands, and it's tied onto his scarf as well.
That's like the ultimate historical documentation of you just bragging.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, it's just bragging. Which is why one of my little rose tokens is actually on my scarf in the same way. It's just right there. But we kind of do everything around the queen and around the princess. Like typically the white scarves are considered in charge of taking care of the queen, and the cadets are considered in charge of taking care of the princess. So for that 3-month period where we've got a crowned princess, you always see somebody with a little red scarf walking around with a little blade behind her. Because it's our job to take care of her. And some of them will also describe it as like, we say we kind of belong to her. Sometimes they say, like, I belong to all of y'all. And that's kind of a very sweet thing, because a lot of this is about, like, crowns making the magic happen for people. So it gives us something to aspire to, something to work towards, somebody we want to make proud. Even if we don't necessarily have somebody we're fighting for our own, we're looking to our queen, we're looking to our princess, we're looking to make her proud, do right by her.
Well, most of the culture, as I understand it, I mean, of course, rapier represents the end of the sword fighting period, where chivalric combat is kind of the apex of the early period of sword fighting.
Yeah.
But most of the later period, I mean, you have the first truly continental female power with Queen Elizabeth.
Yes.
And the queens of Spain and France were not the wallflowers of their 12th and 13th century counterparts. So a woman's influence historically is well documented. I take it that's where a lot of this is getting its shape from then.
Yes. That and Master Robin of Gilwell has noted that one of the reasons the rapier culture in Ansteorra tends to be so different from rapier culture kind of in the rest of the society, where it's in the rest of the society, if they've got Cult of Regina a little bit, or they've got a Queen's Champion, it's a little more just like, this is a ceremonial thing, this is an excuse to have a tournament. We are like frothing at the mouth rabid about our queen and princess.
And I can attest to this, again, outside perspective, so I'm not biased on this. I have witnessed conversations where someone would say something that could be perceived as a slight to the king, and invariably 1 or 2 knights and 2 or 3 squires will step up and square up and do the backyard brawl square up. I watched some poor soul inadvertently question the queen's integrity on a statement she made. And the 2 closest cadets, never mind, there were no white scarves in the area, the 2 closest cadets had to be physically restrained from crossing the room and taking a swing at the guy.
Sounds right.
And we joke about that. And for clarity, for whatever FBI guy is watching this taking notes, I say that in jest. I don't think there would have been blood drawn or physical violence. But the zeal and the honest determination that goes into the rapier community's efforts to protect and uphold the queen is an entirely different shape and flavor and tempo than what the knights put out in protecting the king's honor. Not saying one is better than the other, they're just entirely different shapes.
What Master Robin has suggested is that might be in part because Texas and Oklahoma both have like this very southern culture of the father may assume he's the in control of the house, but everybody lets him think that.
You have the ruler of the roost, then you have the ruler of the rooster.
Yes. Like, everybody knows the matriarch is in charge, and we've kind of extended that to, yes, Your Majesty, you did a really good job winning that tournament. Thank you for putting her on the throne. We are now concerned with her.
Now, it's a fascinating subject, and as a herald who has been kind of at the peripheral of the community for many years, I always found the Cult of Regina, the rapier community as a whole, especially as it's evolved over the past 10 or 15 years, to be fascinating. It's easy to say go put on armor and go fight because I think we all have grown up with stories of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight or King Arthur. A lot of people have never heard of Cult of Regina. And a lot of people have never encountered this, and for me, it's different. I can imagine someone finding this downright scary or intimidating.
It could definitely be scary because it sounds like in order to participate, you have to commit to something big and scary, which you don't. It's more fun, but you don't.
So for the 19-year-old out there, or even this day and age, the 40-year-old out there who's suddenly got time on their hands, they've made it to a few rapier practices, and how do they learn? I mean, how do you get into this? How do you learn about the Cult of Regina? How do you understand the personality in the community, so you can decide whether you want to do this or whether you want to play your game differently?
I will say just straight up, talking to the rapier fighters in your area to also get a feel, because there's different kind of takes on it and different levels of intensity in different regions, even in Ansteorra. But like a lot of it is adding the drama and adding the fun, because we do sometimes get a little bit less press than Shiv, because you can't win crown by rapier, which comes up often. People argue about it all the time, when instead we could just party about the fact that, like, we're not necessarily concerned about winning the crown, we're concerned about looking good. Definitely talk to the people in your area, because like the levels of intensity and like the flavors of it will kind of depend on the people in your exact region and how they play their game, because a lot of it is adding flavor to the game, adding more fun. Because you can go out, you can just say, I'm going to go out, I'm going to get authorized to fight, I'm going to wear bare minimum armor, I'm just going to be just functional, no pretty, no flouncy, I'm going to go out, I'm going to fight, and then I'm going to walk off the field, woohoo, it's fun time. But the fun is in like the kind of leaning into the historicity, the high persona play. Like, there is something very special about maybe bungling a bit of a fight, looking like a fool, and begging Her Majesty's or Her Highness's forgiveness for looking like a dummy.
As a spectator, I can attest to every one of these, because with heavy fighting, it's very professional, and I say that in the sense of the fight's already organized. There's not any aggression or smack talk off the field. It's okay, show up, fight, they beat the tar out of each other, one walks off, one gets carried off. With you guys, it's the moment you find out who you're fighting, there's the barbs and the jokes and the semi or completely crude gestures.
There's so much banter.
And that's before they get on the field. I'm watching this go down on the sidelines, and then you two get on the field, and it's grandiose movements and the bows.
My big thing is always, like, I'm a fairly new-ish fighter. I know where my boundaries are right now. I know approximately who I can and can't take, who I stand, like, chance against. So my goal isn't always to, like, step on the field and win. My goal is to have a good time and make sure my opponent has a good time. So I step on the field, I banter, I chatter. If I'm out of range, I'm doing these big flourishes. I'll, like, twirl my blade and, like, blow a kiss to people. Like, it's about the panache. If a rapier fighter, if a swashbuckler tells you you've got panache, greatest compliment. That is the biggest thing. Like, the big hats.
Rapier definitely is a different flavor. And while I probably will never fight rapier, nothing against rapier, there's a million things to do, and
we could just pull you in.
You can try. For the record, if we're keeping score here, I poached two of their guys for heralding at the last event. So the score's 2-0 right now.
My entire household is just incidental heralds. Just at a moment's notice, we're like, what? Where? What?
Yeah, they are. So, and do you feel like that's a good summary? Do you feel like someone who's watching this for the first time and has just heard about rapier, do you think that's enough for them to...
I think, like, that, and also, like, it's because we draw the theater kids.
There is that.
It's really... If the SCA draws the nerd stereotypes, the people that are, like, more... The people that are more jocks are going to end up in Shiv, especially if they have good joints and good bones. and the people who are more the theater kids with a touch of jock for flavor, a little spice, end up in fencing, end up in rapier. There's a reason we call ourselves swashbucklers. Like,
Yeah.
it is factually correct, but it is so much more dramatic.
Yeah.
And we're here for the drama.
You are, and it's always fun watching you guys fight. Like, if I want a good technical practice, I go to heavy practice. If I want to watch, frankly, a good improv soap opera, I'll go to a rapier.
So, Bravo's a good way to put
I was
it.
gonna say, tell me I'm wrong. I dare you.
You're not wrong.
So let's go ahead and wrap that up.
Okay.
But thank you very much for spending time with us.
Of course.
And if you have the opportunity to run into Ashildr, I'm comfortable speaking for her and saying she'd love to talk with you.
Yes.
Good luck getting rid of her. But
I'll grow on you like a fungus.
until next time, I will see you guys at the next event. Goodbye, and God bless.